So the answer is it completely depends. It may or may not be a good solution.
We heard that some of the clients, can keep the house, keep the car. I'm not talking about people who buy like new Mercedes and ship overseas, but I'm talking about people that have a decent average economy car.
Correct. And that's definitely true. A lot of people have a wrong impression about bankruptcy in general. They think that basically everything is taken away from them, and that's why they don't even consider doing it. But that's just not true. And what you said is correct. About over 99% actually of clients in bankruptcies, people are allowed to keep their car and most of their assets, as long as the equity in those assets are not above a certain limit. And for example, some people, the main issue or the main problem they're having is with credit card debt, but they want to keep the property that they're living in. In other cases, they might not have a lot of debt, but they can no longer handle the mortgage. Well, it's really a matter of, what you can afford to keep, okay? So if you can afford to keep the car or the house, then you can say that that's your intention. And so long as there's not too much equity, for a married couple, they're allowed to keep $30,000 of equity in a house. And for a single filer, it would be 15, half of that. And in cars, joint petitions, $8,000 in personal property and $2,400 per person per car. And most people that have average cars that have a loan on it don't really have that much equity. And so that's the reason why about 99% of filers are allowed to keep their assets. So nobody's coming into their house and taking their property or taking away their cars.
Unfortunately, most of the people who bought property in the last 4 or 5 years don't have much equity.
Yes.
Because property value went down like 20, 30, even 40% in some area, what is really scary. So anything else you want to mention about that?
Well, with respect to that, I think it's really important in that anybody who purchased just about anything in the last 5 years is what we call the upside down, in that they owe more on their mortgage than what the property is worth. And that's a source of tremendous frustration for so many of my clients. And it's some of my clients who are really struggling, but even the ones that are not struggling or are able to pay the bills, it still upsets them to think that they owe so much on an asset that's certainly not worth it. And my advice on that is, you really have to evaluate. I'm certainly included in that situation, as I bought a property within the last 5 years too, and it's completely depreciated in value, and it's probably worth about the loan amount on it. But in essence, I'm paying my mortgage. I'm going to continue, and eventually we hope that the situation will stabilize. But the fact that somebody is upside down doesn't mean that they should stop paying their mortgage or let it go. That's what we call a strategic default, and lenders are definitely on the lookout for that. So if somebody just lets a property go because they're frustrated that they owe more than they think it's worth and don't want to pay the mortgage anymore, the bank will foreclose, and there are consequences on the back end of that. So they can be held responsible for the shortage once that property sells, and the bank will go after them for that shortage.
Yeah, I heard of some banks holding that and they don't want to release it. Also, when you sell short sale, when we're talking about that, so
yes.
You have to make sure that they really release you completely.
Absolutely. Although short sales is are an excellent option for struggling borrowers, and I really like it, and I think that it's definitely catching on with lenders. You definitely need somebody on your side negotiating with these short sale lenders. For my clients, I always specifically request in writing that the lender puts it, because some lenders don't, or they use a standard format. But I always request that they put it in writing that once the sale goes through, that they will not pursue the borrower for any deficiency or any shortage. And usually, we're able to successfully negotiate the lender to put that language in those payoffs.
Just make sure to add and not to sell to any collector agency, because what they do, they're selling to some other third party.
Correct,
and,
correct.
Scary.
And so, and that's another thing to keep in mind for people that sometimes just let a property go and let the chips fall where they may. There are a lot of third-party purchasers of these mortgages. So a third-party collector might, purchase the right to collect from a bank for maybe pennies on the dollar, but they're not making those purchases and acquiring those assets if they don't think that they're going to collect on them later. So I think one thing that I want viewers to know is that they don't have to do it right away, because the situation is bad for everybody now. But down the line, they can wait, and once your situation improves, they can